A few hours after my 9-year-old granddaughter asked me how to spell my signature, I stood in a courthouse filing an emergency injunction against my own daughter. The judge signed it on the spot, because of what my grandchildren told me about their parents' plan to steal my house. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. I am 71 years old. My name is Walter Hale, but the only name that matters to me anymore is Grandpa. Every afternoon at 3:10 I'm in the same spot, behind the magnolia tree at the corner of Sycamore and Birch, waiting for the yellow bus with my thermos and a paper sack of cinnamon rolls. When the doors fold open, 2 comets streak into my arms, Ben at 10, all elbows and questions, and Nora at 9, soft-hearted and fierce in equal measure. We walk the last block to their house together because I like seeing them home. I like seeing them safe. My daughter, Dana, married a man named Nolan 6 years ago. Nolan shakes a hand like he is squeezing a fruit to see if it is ripe. I never trusted that grip. He smiles too much when he is uncomfortable, and he is uncomfortable when faced with someone who has nothing left to prove. They have a pleasant ranch house with a dying lawn and a mortgage he pretends is a victory. On Fridays, if I can, I keep the grandkids instead of sending them on. We make pancakes, walk to the creek, practice multiplication with pennies. I would have a quiet life, if not for a secret I didn't know had been festering in my own family. The first cut came disguised as a kindness. A Thursday. I'd stacked dominoes in a spiral on my kitchen table while the kids finished their homework. The afternoon light was clean and yellow, the kind that makes old wood floors look new again. Ben copied spelling words. Nora drew a page from the book we were reading together, the way she imagined a pirate's daughter might look. She is good at catching the truth of people with just a few pencil lines. When she finished, she came over and set her drawing beside my domino spiral. "Grandpa," she said, "how do you write your name in cursive again?" I smiled. "You know how I feel about you learning cursive. It is a superpower. Come here." She had a little notebook, pink with a broken elastic band. I showed her the curve of the W, the loop of the H, the tail on the E. She practiced. She made a mess. She grinned at the way her hand could learn the dance of my name. After a while she put the pink notebook down and watched me balance the last domino. "Grandpa?" she asked, voice small. "Yes. Is it bad if someone copies your name? On, like, special paper?" I kept my hand steady over the final domino. "You learn, when you're old and have already lost once what you loved most, not to show your fear to people you need to protect." "That depends who and where," I said. "Why?" Nora swallowed. She looked at Ben. He stared back at her with wide eyes, the kind boys have when they understand something is dangerous but do not yet understand what it might cost. "Mom says I'm not supposed to talk about it," she whispered. "Only it feels bad. It feels like lying." "Lying about what?" I asked, softer than soft. "Your house," Ben blurted, because he can only hold water in his palms for so long. "They said they're putting the house in Mom's name so she can keep it safe, because you're old and might forget things. Mom said she has a paper where you gave her permission. Only. I saw the paper and your name is on it, but it doesn't look exactly like your name does, and I heard them practicing." The last domino slipped and knocked the spiral down in a perfect, soft thunder. All the careful work falling at once. I did not speak. "Mom printed a picture of your name from that birthday card you sent," Nora said, eyes on the dominoes. She put white paper on top of it, and Dad held it against the window, and they traced it. Then they practiced and practiced and practiced, and Mom got mad because the J in James never looks right. James is my middle name. Their mother had not known I stopped using it on documents after an incident years ago at the bank. Not because I was clever then, but because a teller mistyped and I liked the way the omission simplified my life. Funny how a small habit can turn into a fence when wolves come. I got up. I walked to the sink. I washed my hands and dried them. On the windowsill were the smooth stones we had painted together with acrylics a summer ago, a ladybug, a comet, a tiny house with a chimney. "Thank you," I said. "Are we in trouble?" Ben asked. "You are safe," I said. "Not in trouble." "Thank you for telling me. Is Mom going to be mad?" Nora asked, the question shaking. "Maybe," I said. "But sometimes people need to be mad to get to the truth. Do you want to help me with that part?" She nodded. I poured milk. I cut 3 slices of the pound cake we'd made Tuesday. I listened to the clock tick and to the small sounds their shoes made against old pine boards. I remembered a younger Dana with skinned knees, the apple of my life, looking up at me and saying, "Do you think I could build a treehouse if you held the ladder?" I remembered holding the ladder while she hammered crooked nails into a crooked dream. I remembered telling her that crooked could still be strong. Maybe that was the lesson she kept from me: crooked can be strong, and she twisted it. By 8 that evening, after their bedtime story, after I sent them home with a bag of cut fruit and the leftover pound cake, I took out the worn leather folder I keep under the drawer where I store the extra dish towels. Inside, my original deed, my late wife's will, my trust papers, my living will, the guardianship letter we'd signed when Dana was 20 and only dreamed of children. I held each page like it was alive. Then I put on my jacket and drove to a place that had saved me once before. The recorder's office in our county is in an old building with bad fluorescent lights and a lot of doors that look like they should be locked but are not. I had a friend there once, Eddie, who owed me a favor. He retired last spring. I did not know anyone behind the counter now, but age and a steady voice still open rooms. I asked for 2 things. A property fraud alert on my parcel and copies of any instruments recorded in the last 90 days referencing my name, my address, or any variant of my name. There has been nothing recorded recently, the clerk said, eyes on his screen. Good, I said. Then we will make the first sound belong to me. I took a number and filled out forms and then asked a question I had hoped never to need to ask. Would you please notarize my signature on an affidavit of identity? And on a sworn statement that I have not transferred or encumbered my property to any person in the last 12 months. There is a tone old men can use when their hands shake but their words do not. It says, life already tried to kill me once and failed. It says, do not become my next lesson. The clerk nodded. I signed. The notary stamped. I recorded both. When I stepped into the evening again, the air smelled like rain. The magnolia leaves were glossy. I sat in my car, and I spoke out loud to the woman who taught me that if you cannot fix what is broken yet, you can at least prevent further breakage. Margaret, I said, if you are watching, forgive me. I am about to stop being gentle. I slept 5 hours and woke before dawn. Before the kids, before the bus, before the coffee pot could finish sighing. I wrote 2 letters. I left them sealed on my kitchen table. One had my lawyer's card clipped to it. The other was addressed to my grandchildren, not to be opened until I said it was time. After school, I took them to the library because that is one of the few places left where people still whisper. I figured whispering would make it easier for them to tell me what they had heard. In a corner beneath the community bulletin board, Ben took the pink notebook from Nora and handed it to me like it weighed more than he could carry. "She said not to tell," he said. "But if we do not, we might not get to live with you on weekends anymore." "I do not want to not live with you." "Your mom thinks this is about what she is owed," I said, opening the notebook and seeing my name repeated, imperfect but dangerously close. "She is wrong. It is about what you are owed." "What are we owed?" Nora asked. "Safety," I said. "A home we can count on. A grown-up who will look a judge in the eye and say, 'I am not moving out of this house because two people with bad math and worse hearts say I should.'" Back at my kitchen, I took out Margaret's old cake tin. Inside, I keep a length of ribbon, 3 birthday candles, and copies of everyone's birth certificates in case the house ever burned and I needed to prove who we are in a hurry. I added something new, the pink notebook. Then I called a lawyer. There is a field of law most people hope never to understand until they are forced to, elder financial abuse. It sits where family law, criminal law, and property law bump shoulders and glare at one another. The woman I called, Priya Patel, has the look of a person who never sleeps and never forgets. I told her everything. I used names. I did not cry. She listened. She asked a dozen questions. She gave me a list. First, she said, we file for a temporary restraining order. It will be limited in scope, no contact regarding finances, no attempts to pressure you, and no further steps from them on your behalf. Second, we record a notice of interest, some counties call it a property fraud warning, attached to your parcel. Third, we create a trust with a spendthrift clause. You will be settlor and trustee. The beneficiaries will be named as your grandchildren. Fourth, we obtain a capacity evaluation. Not because you need one. Because we must consider how they will attack us. Say the trust again, I said. Maple Street Trust, if you like. Something benign. You fund it with your house and any accounts you want protected. You retain a life estate. Upon your death, it does not pass through probate, and your daughter cannot contest what she was never named to receive. I closed my eyes. In my head, I could already see the plaque, small and hidden near the back steps, the way I always hide the important things in plain sight, Maple Street Trust, for Ben and Nora. Fifth, Priya said, you will stop talking to your daughter alone. Everything goes through me. If she calls, you end the call. If she shows up, you call me. If she escalates, you call the police and say the words, I am an elder being harassed about my property. Those words unlock a protocol. And sixth, she said, you will remain soft with the children. Always, I said. A week later, on a Wednesday, the first alarm bell I had set did what it was supposed to. At 2:17 p.m., my phone buzzed with an email from the county's property alert. A document had been submitted for recording referencing my name and parcel. A quitclaim deed, drafted 3 days earlier. I forwarded it to Priya. She called me twice in a row. You at home? She asked. No, I said. At the creek with the kids. Good. Stay there. I'll handle the recorder. We already recorded your affidavit and the trust's deed, so theirs will be flagged. And because we filed for the TRO this morning, they're about to learn what a judge's signature feels like when it lands on fragile plans. What if they get it recorded before it's flagged? I asked. She exhaled. Then we'll quiet the title. But they won't. The identity affidavit is like a wall. And our judge assigned to the TRO is not impressed by amateur theater. At 3:02, a sheriff's cruiser rolled past the end of the footpath. I watched it trail dust until it stopped in front of my daughter's house. I did not cheer. There is nothing to celebrate when your own child has to read from a piece of paper that tells her not to come near her father's deed again. There is only the dull relief of a bridge not collapsing under you. The call came at 6:11. "Dad," Dana said. Her voice had the brittle shine of a plate that looks fine until you tap it and hear the crack. "What is this?" "A court order," I said. "It isn't a surprise. You knew you were playing with fire." She breathed in sharply. She was in that place people go when they realize the story they've practiced in their mirror sounds different when the law listens. "It was just to keep it safe," she said. Nolan said. "Stop," I said. "Whatever Nolan said has made you smaller for years. Do not shrink yourself enough to fit inside his excuses." "You think this is easy for us," she shot back. "We're drowning. Your mortgage is the only real asset this family has besides your retirement. You are alone in that big house. Everyone knows it is better for you to downsize." "You mean sell the home you were raised in, so you can buy your husband time," I said. "I will not trade my grandchildren's anchor for Nolan's float." Silence. Then, in a lower voice, like she might hide the words from the walls, "You would choose them over me." "No," I said. "I would choose you by refusing to let you become the kind of person who steals from her father and teaches her children that theft is love." "You think you can stop us," she said. There was something ugly behind the words. Not rage. Another kind of hunger. "You think a piece of paper." "The last piece of paper you tried to use had my name wrong," I said. "This one has a judge's name exactly right." She hung up. I slept badly. I dreamed that I stood in a field while pens fell from the sky like hail. I dreamed that I found a little white van parked under my magnolia, and inside it was a man with a plastic stamp and a promise that nothing would hurt anymore if I just signed where he showed me. The next morning, I called Priya. "Do we go to the police yet?" I asked. "We will," she said. "But first, I want to see the document they attempted to record. I want to hold it up against your affidavit and make the differences sing." They had tried to rush their deed through the kiosk at the courthouse, like people who duck into a convenience store to buy cigarettes on the way to a wedding. That, at least, was consistent with who Nolan is, someone who believes most rules are, primarily, opportunities to prove he is slippery. The county flagged it. The clerk, bless him, called our number of record, exactly as the alert system directs. When Priya walked into the recorder's office, the quitclaim deed was in a folder labeled "Review." She read it and smiled the way a surgeon does when a tumor is right where the scan said it would be. She took a copy. She handed the clerk a certified copy of the Maple Street Trust deed we had recorded 2 days earlier. She handed over the TRO. She asked to attach both to the flagged document. The clerk said yes. "You know what I love about the law," Priya said, when she called me from the steps of the courthouse. "When people think paperwork is a trick, they underestimate how loud paperwork can shout." Within a day, the quitclaim had been rejected. Within 3 days, we had a hearing date on the injunction to convert it from temporary to permanent, and to enjoin further attempts to encumber the property. I put on my black suit. I polished my shoes. I took the bus downtown because I wanted to remember who I am around strangers. Courtrooms are cold. They are meant to be. They preserve more than justice there, they preserve an atmosphere in which heat is not a weapon. The judge looked younger than me by 30 years, but then, most people do now. Across the aisle, my daughter sat next to her husband. His restless knee telegraphed more than he knew. Dana kept her hands clenched in her lap. I wished for her to unclench them. I wished for her to be the girl who held my ladder. When our case was called, Nolan's lawyer introduced an idea that stunk of his cologne, that all of this was a misunderstanding born of concern. He said the quitclaim had been printed by mistake and that no fraud had been intended. He said that sometimes aging parents need paperwork in order to stay safe. Then he pivoted into an attack, that I was forgetful and confused. He did not look at me when he said it. He looked at the judge, his tongue moving like a salesman's avenue. Priya stood and laid out our exhibits, the property alert email, the sworn identity affidavit, the original deed into the Maple Street Trust, already recorded, the TRO. And then the thing I had not wanted her to use unless they insisted, the pink notebook. She did not hand the notebook to the judge. She held it, like a little bird you are not sure yet is ready to fly. Your Honor, she said, my client's grandchildren are not in this room. That is on purpose. We will not ask them to testify against their mother today. But this notebook explains the urgency, the text messages from Ms. Hale to her husband about practicing Dad's name, and the list of steps they would take before he notices. We are not here to determine guilt today. We are here to stop harm. The judge leaned back. The quiet got large. The bailiff leaned on one foot. I am granting the injunction, the judge said. I am also ordering that any attempt by either respondent to contact Mr. Hale about his property, or to present themselves to any third party as acting in his legal interest, will be considered a violation of this order. And I am making a referral to the District Attorney's Elder Abuse Unit. Finally, I am ordering that any instrument they attempted to record be attached to this order as Exhibit A. Priya nodded. She didn't smile. Neither did I. But I did look at my daughter then. For the first time since we walked in. I wanted to catch her eye. I wanted to say with my face what the law had said with its stamp, stop. You do not have to go any farther down this road. She looked at the table instead. The day after court, a detective called. He is the kind of man who wears short-sleeved shirts so his forearms can use their own language. He asked if I would consent to a recorded interview. He asked for the names of the notaries my daughter uses for her real estate side jobs. He asked if I was willing to allow a search of my daughter's home for forgery implements. The phrase struck me as so 19th century that it almost made me laugh. Then I remembered the pink notebook. Detective, I said, I want to protect my grandchildren. That is my first priority. That's mine too, he said. The law gives me a few tools for that. You did the right thing getting ahead of this. They found the printer in the spare room. That is not a crime. They found stacks of practicing sheets, some with my name, some with others. They found a manila folder labeled Dad, Estate and Power of Attorney, containing printed forms downloaded from a one-size-fits-all legal website, forms that, ironically, had the correct spelling of the word attorney crossed out and replaced with Dana's handwriting. They found my old checkbook ledger that went missing last Thanksgiving after the kids and I made gingerbread houses and my daughter offered to help me clean up. They found a thin light panel you could press paper against to trace. For a second, I imagined Nora watching her mother press my name into its glow. The detective told me later that Nolan had gone quiet while they searched, and that my daughter cried. I have seen both kinds of silence before. I do not know which one scares me more. People love stories where villains are cuffed in slow motion in their own living rooms. It makes for good television. This is not that story. The district attorney decided to file a misdemeanor count of attempted recordation of a forged instrument against Nolan and a diversion agreement for Dana, contingent on counseling and restitution. That is how the world works when harm is almost but not yet done, and when the victims are not strangers. I accepted the outcome because the protects, the papers, the trust, the injunction, had done their work. And because I had another plan. On a Saturday that smelled like rain and soil, I took a ladder from the garage and leaned it against the maple tree in my backyard. The kids stood in the grass in their boots. We hauled up boards. We used the old socket set with the missing 12mm. We asked the wood for mercy, and we accepted its creaks. By afternoon, a platform lived between two branches. By sundown, 3 walls could keep wind out. We sat on the floor and ate sandwiches with too much mustard and listened to the crickets like a congregation. What if it falls? Ben asked. Then we fix it, I said. Can Mom come up? Nora asked. One day, I said. When she says the right things in the right order. What are the right things? She asked. I am sorry, I said. And I will not do it again. And I will not make you lie for me. The next week, I called a family meeting. Not at my house. At the office of the woman who had been my wife's best friend, the one who had told me after Margaret's funeral that grief can make people into strange instruments. We sat in a glass-walled room with a bowl of peppermints on the table. Priya was there. The detective, for the first few minutes. A counselor. My daughter. Nolan, eyes squinting like he had swallowed something that disagreed with him but did not yet know which end it planned to exit. The kids, in the lobby with puzzles. I am not here to punish you, I said. The law handled that, lightly. I am here to draw lines. My house is no longer mine to give to you. It belongs to the Maple Street Trust. I administer it until I am done living. When I am done living, it belongs to your children outright. There are provisions that forbid you from selling it while they are minors or pressuring them to borrow against it. There is a clause that removes any guardian who tries. You cannot do this, Nolan said. It is unjust enrichment to bypass your heirs. I looked at him. I looked at the person who had made my daughter smaller and meaner. And then I remembered he is not a magician, he is a man. You are not an heir, I said. And my daughter is still my heir under the law. But not to my house. Dana's voice was very small. You disinherited me. No, I said. I gave you something you needed more. A chance to stop stealing from the future. She cried then. Not the kind of crying you do to flash a red light and get what you want. The kind that empties. She reached for the peppermints and did not unwrap one. She stared at the red and white spiral until I thought it would hypnotize her into being a child again. Dad, she said, finally. I was scared. I know, I said. Fear is a thief. But I taught you not to let it be your teacher. The counselor spoke then, not to diagnose, just to arrange the pieces on the table gently. We talked about money. We talked about help. I offered a narrow path. If they agreed to 3 years of transparency with a financial counselor, if they agreed to certain boundaries, I would consider a loan for a car. Not a gift. Paperwork with interest that can teach as loudly as neglect. They signed the diversion program forms. They agreed to counseling. They left with less than they came for. Sometimes that is the gift. I took the kids for ice cream to celebrate nothing more dramatic than the absence of further harm. We sat on the curb in the noise of a normal world. Nora wiped a line of chocolate from her lip with the back of her hand and left a smear on her cheek. "Did we do the right thing?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Because we did it together." 2 months passed, and with them, a healing I did not trust. The injunction became permanent. The DA closed the file. The detective called me once to say, "You did good," in the tone men share when nothing further needs to be explained. I found myself sleeping a little heavier. Then, one afternoon, I found a cereal box on my back steps. Someone had tucked it behind the gas meter. It was the brand Nolan Eats. You learn those stupid details when your daughter marries someone who likes to show up and show off. Inside the box, under a false bottom, was a flat light panel, 3 sheets of translucent paper with my name traced over and over, and a note in my daughter's handwriting. "I found this in our garage and I did not want it in my house. I am sorry." I sat on the steps and held the panel like a frying pan I would never cook with again. I wanted to be a man who could receive an apology without imagining the extra ways it might be used. I spoke to the magnolia like it could pass my words along to the right ears. "She is learning," I said. "But keep me sharp." In July, when the heat turned air into something you had to push, I took the kids to the county fair. We looked at goats. We ate fried dough that felt like it could clog a healthy heart. We walked through the exhibition hall where children had entered quilts and photos and pies. In the corner where the 4-H kids display their woodworking, a man lifted his camera and took our picture. Ben and Nora were holding the ribbon they'd won for the small bench we built together, the one with the imperfect dovetail that still holds 12 times its weight. The photograph found its way into the local paper. The caption made me laugh: "Grandfather and 2 grandchildren win blue ribbon for something that will not fall." I cut the clipping. I taped it inside the cake tin where I keep the documents that matter most. When I opened the tin later to slip in a worn-out Metro card, the ribbon brushed my wrist and I felt, for a second, Margaret's hand there, cool and firm, telling me I had done something right with what time I had left. By August, the treehouse had a roof, and the plaque near the back step was screwed into the brick with stainless steel fasteners. You have to kneel to read it. Most people do not know it is there. It says exactly what it needs to: Maple Street Trust, for Ben and Nora. No sale. No loans. No lies. On the first day of school, the bus sighed and the doors opened and the kids came out with new pencil cases and full hearts. We walked past the magnolia. We passed the corner where, once upon a Thursday, my granddaughter asked how to spell my name. "Grandpa," Nora said, grabbing my hand. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "I dreamed last night that someone came and tried to take our house. But then the house got bigger and bigger until it could not fit in their car." I laughed, and I bent down to kiss the top of her head. "Then you dreamed the truth," I said. That afternoon, I visited the courthouse one more time. Not for an injunction. Not for an affidavit. Just to sit on a bench and listen to other people's lives being put into stacks that made sense. A woman wept in a hallway. A man talked softly into a phone. A clerk drank water and rubbed her temple. Justice is not a poem. It is a ledger and a rhythm and a heavy door that you must learn how to open so you can step into a room and say, without shouting, the thing that must be said. On my way out, I stopped by the recorder's counter. The same clerk looked up and recognized me. I asked for a certified copy of the trust deed. He stamped it and slid it under the glass. "Do a lot of people put their houses in trusts?" he asked, making conversation. Not enough, I said. He nodded. Well, yours is safe. No, I said, but not unkindly. It is watched. Safety is something we do. I left the courthouse and stood on the steps, sun on my face, papers in my jacket, a thermos cooling in my grip. Somewhere, the bus exhaled at a curb and two children carried their backpacks down 3 steps and into an afternoon. Somewhere, my daughter sat in a room with a counselor and learned to put the word sorry before the word but and then learned to remove but entirely. Somewhere, a man with a slippery smile discovered what happens when a house refuses to be an answer to a question it was never meant to answer. I walked home. I climbed the ladder. I hammered 2 nails into the treehouse frame that did not strictly need to be there. I sat. A breeze moved like a permission through the leaves. In my pocket, the trust deed warmed against my leg. The next Saturday, I took the kids to the notary at the UPS store, the one by the grocery with the old neon open sign that still works even though it should not. We carried an envelope. I made them hold it together. What is it? Ben asked. A letter, I said. It says how the house works. It says that one day when I am done living, people will try to tell you that everything is complicated. This says it is not. Where is it going? Nora asked. To you, I said. But first it will live in a safe place. And if anyone tells you that homes are measured by square feet or marketing photos or interest rates, you may read it and remind them what really measures a home. What is that? Nora asked. How many times it refused to fall, I said. And who kept it standing? We paid the notary. The woman stamped and smiled at the 2 small faces staring up at the magic of paper being made official. We walked out into the heat. I felt smaller and stronger all at once. I thought of Margaret's last clear sentence, take care of them, and I thought of how care sometimes looks like pancakes and sometimes looks like a judge's order and sometimes looks like a plaque low to the ground where only children remember to look. Months later, when the case file had been boxed and a clerk had wheeled it into a basement, when Dana had finished her last counseling session, she knocked on my door. The magnolia leaf shadows moved over her face. She looked as if she had slept. She held out a piece of paper. What is this? I asked, and I did not take it yet. A letter, she said. To you. And to them. I opened the door wider. I led her into the kitchen. The paper shook in her hand, and I thought of another paper long ago, shaking for another reason. I read. It was short. The best apologies are. Dad, I did not just try to take your house. I tried to take away who you are to me and to them. I will spend whatever years you give me trying to rebuild what I broke. If you tell me to leave your porch now, I will. If you tell me to sit, I will listen. I am sorry. I pulled out a chair. She sat. We said almost nothing else. Sometimes, in the slow architecture of repair, silence is a brick too. When she left, I took the letter to the cake tin. I lifted the ribbon. I set her letter beside my wife's will and our trust deed and the little newspaper clipping where a stranger wrote the word blue. I closed the tin. I placed it back under the dish towels. I stood at the sink and looked out at the maple and said the same prayer I have been saying since I first bought this porch, let the people I love outlive my fear. Let them learn what to carry. Let them learn what to leave. You could call the rest of it a quiet life again, if you did not know how much effort a quiet life requires. I still meet the bus at 3:10 every afternoon. I still keep a sack of cinnamon rolls in the freezer, just in case. I still keep my name like a small, important flame inside the safe place I have made of a house that refused to become leverage. After the leaves fell and the air smelled the way old leather smells when it has remembered your hand, we laid the fourth wall of the treehouse, painted it the green of my wife's eyes, and nailed a tin sign above the low door in letters hand, cut by two children who know exactly what a house is. It said, simply, Grandpa's. Forever.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.